Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Today I'm joined by Edwin, and Edwin is building a rockery. Hi, Edwin.
Staying the crows, Martin. Staying the crows. I told the doctors I should have just left it. Should have just left the stones in there for another 20 years, and I reckon they would have turned into pearls or perhaps even diamonds. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Well, yeah, you've been under the knife, and good to see you up and about again. But don't laugh too much, right?
No. It's still a little bit tender. It's unexpected, but my mother always said if I do something, I'll make sure I go, call a lot of attention to it. One of the bloody things was over 4 centimeters big and close to 4.5, and the other 4 were over 3.3 centimeters big, apparently, from what they tell me.
Wow, that's pretty big. You should mount them somewhere.
Well, I said to them, look, did you take a photograph of them and so I can put them on Instagram or something? They just laughed. I wasn't kidding.
Well, you could have taken a photograph and created a digital image, and then you could have created it with a unique ID and, sold it on the web.
Well, yeah, I would have given Dusty and Evan a bit of competition. They're I've got a bit of $7.5. So it's not sort of getting up there, to the 75 million. But we're not politicians, Martin, or we're not sons of politicians. So we'll see how far we go with that.
Absolutely. Well, a quick shout out to the Mount Druitt crew, eh?
Look, definitely a huge shout out. My specialist obviously performs a lot of surgery there, and he's got a great team there. And look, no matter where my specialists take me, I go because they're a fine bunch of people. And lo and behold, the nursing staff and the doctors there also on call were very, very experienced, caring, and exceptional, Martin. And they really do need a shout out. They do a lot of work, especially under these stressful circumstances that they're under. They're in the front line, and a huge shout out to the faculty there, and also the all the specialist services around the hospital, which I also attended pre the operation, and with imaging and MRIs and CT scans I had to get done on the fly and quickly, so that the doctors can know what was going on. It was a bit of concern, but I could say I was in great hands.
Absolutely. Well, now the question which springs to mind is, what is that going to do for your veggie patch, right? Because you've started now.
Well, look, I've got to take it slow. I did get started on the mulching beforehand, as the viewers can see. But look, it's just a couple of weeks off from doing any heavy lifting. But I'm thinking of maybe calling in some of those tradies that aren't on construction sites and see if they can get their excavators over to the property and do some work.
Good idea, absolutely. Well, let's talk about property listings, right? Because they're basically going down the gurgler.
But they are going down the gurgler, and look, it's this whole shifting sands that you and I have been speaking about for over a year and a half, and how this whole thing was going to turn the property industry on its head. The numbers continue to track downward. The listing numbers for homes are closer to 5,000, just over 5,100 as we speak. And this time last year, they were actually tracking upwards. We got to close to 8,500 for freestanding homes. And if you recall, Martin, back then, around the same week last year, not only were the listing numbers going up, but also the prices of homes. I was documenting and I was reporting that they were retreating to 2017 pricing and dropping, and there was a lot of property available. But now that obviously that's changed a lot, And with all this uncertainty, it just these lockdowns and these uh, policy on the fly that we get from flip-flop the flip-flopping governments and Gladys, it's just it's anybody's guess as to where it's going to go. But I think its prices are going to continue to track north. That's for homes until the pressure that's on the apartments, is eased and the numbers start tracking back upwards with regards to listing numbers. But who knows when that's going to be? There's an eviction moratorium for the next 60 days for rental properties, and most of them are basically for the people that live in apartments. Needless to say, also there are also things that the government's put in place for rental relief for the tenants, as well as for, in this time around, for landlords as well, up to $1,500 they could claim over the 60-day eviction moratorium that the government's got on.
Yeah, but it's interesting because, of course, the AFR still spruiks property. It's basically not in a tailspin according to them.
Look, the AFR always seem, not always, but most of the time, seem to be late to the party when it comes to the changes. But then again, the AFR only, they promote what they want to promote, and obviously are a voice for the bigger players and the bigger bodies and the political groups, depending on their bent. The thing that's of great concern, is obviously the pricing and the entry points for first home buyers and those that need a property, a dwelling to live in, not as an investment, but as for a lifestyle, to give security for the future. That's a question that they should be pushing and asking and pouncing on the doors of the political elites to give better answers than the ones that we've been getting, Martin. But unfortunately, the media seems to be persuaded, whoever pays their advertising dollars or pays the highest amount of advertising dollars, and whatever else they get.
Well, the AFR is the banker's rag at the end of the day, isn't it? So you perhaps wouldn't expect much else than what they're saying. But more broadly, I have to say that the media and their chat about property is all over the place at the moment. So I don't bother too much. I just look at the underlying data. But talking of the media, the interesting article about apartments up in Queensland, NRL online, they basically said the never-ending story. NRL families forced to gaffer tape their doors shut and send a photo to Queensland Health as proof.
Well, there's a lot of things that story conjures up, Martin, and there's a lot of things that policy or whatever, again, policies on the fly that conjure up. Obviously, one of them is the concerns and these bureaucrats that obviously haven't read a lot of the Lancet or any other medical reports that are verified. As to how this whole thing spreads in badly ventilated areas. All I can say is that hopefully in this hotel or service apartment complex, whatever the case may be, that they better make sure they have state-of-the-art ventilating systems, because otherwise it's just going to spread. I mean, family and friends in China, they know how to deal with a lot of these situations, and when it comes to high-rise developments or high-rise lifestyle, the ventilation is key. Not only that, but also the sewage system and the wastewater and how that's dealt with, and what they do to the individual apartments or dwellings in order to stop the aerosols from coming out and the virus from spreading. So obviously, it's again policy on the fly. And if these are service apartments, the question is going to be: should anything happen? Should anything bad happen, or a spread occurs in these complexes that they're being prevented from getting fresh air? Should anything bad happen to any one of these families, who's going to be liable? If it's serviced apartments, more than likely they're going to be, the apartments are going to be individually owned by investors or by groups of investors. So liability is going to be a major issue.
Yeah, well, I had this rather wicked thought, if gaffer tape has become the frontline defence for COVID-19, what does that say, right? Maybe they should experiment with gaffer tape and masks. It could be onto a new winner.
Look, they could be. Well, look, now that we're going to go down that path, I mean, you just tickled my fancy, Martin. It's just one of those things that I just maybe what we could do is come up with a face mask and put gaff tape around the edges, and then we will get it'll be properly sealed. And it's forget the 3-ply or we could turn surgical masks into high value commodity.
Absolutely. Well, to me, gaffer tape is a critical tool of my trade, so I recommend its wide use wherever
well, they're
possible.
using gaff tape on. I've seen them use gaff tape on the external facades of buildings, Martin. So I'll dig up a Twitter. I'll dig up a Twitter photo, a post that I put up a year ago, where I drove past the building in Liverpool where the panels, the cladding on the outside were badly bent, and they were literally held together by with gaff. I'll dig it up somewhere, or one of our followers would probably troll through my Twitter feed and they'll find it.
Very good.
Rather interesting.
It
has a lot of uses.
Absolutely. Well, thoroughly recommended. Now, talking about really important uses, right? Here's an idea from Steve Keane, right? Steve Keane, who's I think up in Thailand at the moment, away from Australia. In fact, I hope to interview him in about 3 weeks, so hopefully get a post from him there. But he's saying, look, got to understand we've got too much debt in this country, and the fact is, unless we actually get the debt down, things are not going to go well. And he's basically made a very interesting suggestion. And I have to say, my immediate reaction is, well, maybe ordinary people make better spending decisions than governments.
Look, it was a very much in your face statement that he's making on that article. I mean, a debt jubilee of $100,000 per person. I mean, maybe they should do that in China and really incentivize the people to have more than 2 children. I mean, they're pushing them to have 3 children in order to keep up with the supply chains of future labour, aren't they? So maybe they could do that as well. Incentivize them to with 100,000 yuan to have more kids. But when it comes to spending, I'm pretty much on par with you, Martin, and I can concur with your thoughts. I think individuals will spend the money a lot better than what the government has done to date in the methods and all these ad hoc policies that they've implemented. But look, sadly, on the other hand, though, it's unfortunately we've had and for many years now, for almost 2 decades, such heavy reliance on materials from overseas. We just couldn't keep up with the demand to build new dwellings, to make it affordable and to build something decent for the people that are the new comes into the property arena with respect to first home buyers and the Generation Y and Generation Z. So it's but yeah, look, I agree with you on that front. We can. I'm sure there'll be different ways, but it begs to the question. Nonetheless, it begs to be asked, and that is what is the government going to implement other than just throwing money ad hoc at things? And when you throw it at people, in dribs and drabs, and it only facilitates a sector of the many industries that make up the majority of the working force, the Australian working force. It raises a lot of questions. Again, we go back to political donations and the grift that governments get.
Absolutely, and it's worth reflecting. I think the ABC reported last week a share of the JobKeeper that was actually shelled out to companies last time around that actually increased their turnover relative to where they were previously, right? So there's a big number, which highlights the problem when you throw money, where do you throw it? It's quite important, right? And the point about what Steve is saying is that, look, you have to find a circuit breaker, right? Because we can't just go on the way we're going on, which is inflating house prices and inflating debt more relative to income. We need a circuit breaker here. So I think there's quite a lot in what he's saying, and maybe when I chat with him in a few weeks' time, I'll try and get some more information as to what the strategy would be. In other words, would you take the value of the prices of property down the same amount, for example? And what happens to people who don't have debts? Would they get the money too? I imagine they would, because this is almost a universal basic income type thought, at least a one-off transaction. But I'm just not convinced that governments really are that expert at spending money in the right places.
Look, the proof's in the pudding, and we are where we are, and no preparation for where we are now from previous governments of all persuasions, and the question again that begs to be asked is, is there any preparation for the future? I dare say no, and again, it's policy on the run. Unfortunately, and it's policy that gives everybody the shits, because it's stop starting and not knowing. I keep on thinking of the poor bastards that in middle of 2020 they were conned into borrowing more money to COVID proof their small businesses, or mainly in the hospitality sector, and they borrowed from 60 to 120, some articles that I read from 120 to even 160 to COVID safe their businesses to make that money back over the Christmas break. And what happened in Christmas? I mean, we were shut down again, and so many things that happened, all because of the bad decisions that are made, and the flip-flopping and changing of policies again on the run. But the industries that the sectors and the industries that don't get affected, obviously, as you and I've said many times, are the ones that are controlling the bigger bodies, the bigger groups that are absorbing all the smaller players, the smaller groups, as well as the those that have some sort of connection, a very strong connection with the government groups. Look, and I'll say this, only this morning, our Premier said that when she was asked on 2GB why weren't gardeners, given the fact that they're working outdoors, why weren't they allowed to work? And she made a statement, words to the effect, because it's to stop the spread and the transmissibility. That worker will have to inevitably get petrol along the way. Will have to go and get materials in order to do the work, and so forth. Okay, I give her that. But then again, if you've got a property that needs to be prepared for sale or for rent, as long as it's vacant, you can get any amount of tradespeople in the property to work. How does that differ to the gardeners that are the people that just simply mow lawns for a living? What's the difference? What, they don't need petrol, they don't need materials, they don't need to venture into shops to buy their necessities, and they don't mix with people. Is that what she's saying?
Well, unfortunately, the big end of town, of course, and the property sector have the ear of the Premier, and they're all grizzling about the fact the construction is shut down for a little while. But it does seem very, very asymmetric, and unfortunately, I'm not sure where it's going to go. So we'll wait and see. But you mentioned small business, and that's a very important thing to think about. A lot of small businesses, of course, are located in CBDs, and interestingly, the CBD rents and malls are all over the place, according to an article that I saw in The Age.
Well, look, that's correct, and these are the poor bastards that I referred to, because they were the ones that were gearing up a lot, towards when we're coming up to summer last year. They were gearing up and preparing the premises to make it COVID safe, and because they believe the government, and it's these businesses that are once again suffering. And the article in The Age just points out how the Melbourne, particularly in the Melbourne, the prize shopping strips, are getting decimated in terms of rentals. Now, we do have to give a shout out to Mark_G_Davies for posting this discussion on Twitter, and it's a very interesting discussion. And he also shared some very interesting graphs. After I shared with respect to we're going to see that the rents are going to are not going to fall any further, or they'll seemingly won't be seen to fall. What we'll see is a greater increase in incentives, and that's in the fit-out period. So typically you get a 1 month per year over a 3-year lease or a 5-year lease, or thereabouts, to get the good long-term tenants into your commercial property, so that obviously the value maintains, or you don't lease it out at all, or you don't lease it up if the rents don't sustain what you perceive or what you bought the property for, in order to keep the value, because the valuers look at the rental return to determine the value of the property. That's one of the main points, with commercial, working out the value of a commercial property. In residential, it plays a small part, a smaller part with regards to the rental return, but with commercial, it's that rental return is pertinent to the value. So what we're going to see is more incentives that will be hidden or won't be disclosed in the leases, and values won't be aware of, but those incentives will be hidden. So in some cases, you might get 6-month rent-free period in a commercial property, and it may only be a 3-year lease.
Right, so that's going to certainly impact the yields, isn't it? Because I'm conscious that a lot of these large retail and other areas in some of our CBDs and beyond are actually owned by pension funds, right? Who are actually big holders of property portfolios indirectly. So if in fact the net yields are going to go down as a result of that, that's not good news for superannuation.
Not at all. And this is why there's a huge push for the build to rent scenarios, because that's the other option where these superannuation funds or these private funds and companies are going to basically bastardize that side of the rental arena, and to hell with the individual mum and dad investors that bought and to try to build a portfolio for the retirement. So the individual investors on that side of things, in the residential side of things, is going to get smashed. And also, good luck to the overseas investors that also bought heavily in these areas. So it's just really a shifting of the incomes to benefit the bigger players. Again, Martin, we go back to that whole philosophical point of view that I have with regards to all this, and that is that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and the middle class is diminishing by the month.
Yeah, the squeeze is on, absolutely. And interestingly, your last article for tonight posed for me a really interesting question, right? Which is, can developers be trusted over 20 years, no less?
Well, this was a rather peculiar article when you read it, and you obviously, the detail, the devil's going to be in the detail. But the main point that jumped out at me when I read this article was that the developer is saying that they're going to put up an $11 million cashback guarantee. $11 million in that area across those apartments would represent, in my view, 15 average apartments or 2 of the penthouses. So when we're talking about 900 apartments in that development, that's in my view, that's pittance. That's just my view. I'm not saying that this is the overall view. That's just my observation. Look, it's a bit better than the 2% levy that the government put on when they diluted the guarantees that investors had when they diluted them in 2014, 2015, and we've got the shit show that we've got now with regards to the the issue in rectification of these buildings. The other question that it raises, and the other comparison that I make with this, is we're talking a levy or a guarantee, as the developer puts it out. And look, at least is to an extent putting some money where his mouth is. But when you look at what happened to Mascot Towers, how much will they be losing overall in being such a smaller development? I think that development's only about 55 or 60 units in comparison to 900, and I think from memory, they're going to be losing across the board. They're going to be losing about $30 million, if not more, when at the end of the day, could even, I think, $30 or $38 million. So it's really one of those scenarios. Is it going to be enough? And that really is the overarching question. Is this going to be enough? And is it going to sustain the amount of work and the ongoing costs that owners of in this complex are going to be, the added cost that they're going to be paying by way of insurance, maintenance, and so forth. So all I can see is a litigation nightmare moving forward, even if this offer is accepted, so that the people that bought, so that they can obtain the occupation certificate, and the people that bought can move in by the end of August, is my understanding.
But you see, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the very fact that Top Lace have actually extended this for 20 years, right, and have put cash on the table, as it were, highlights that they're acutely aware of the bad publicity around poor quality construction and defects, right? And as you say, the total amount of money they're putting up is relatively small relative to the risk they should be covering over that long period. But I do think it speaks volumes in terms of the construction sector realising that they have to do at least something to try and actually come towards prospective purchasers, because so many people that I speak with are not interested in going anywhere near high-rise at the moment, because the defects question and the unknown unknowns around the future defects are just so big.
Look, that's correct. And it's not until you start actually, like, $11 million sounds like a lot of money, but when you start putting it all together, it's pittance. As I said, it would represent the value of 15 units in that complex. I'll put it another way as I think of it. The average unit value in that complex is probably around $900,000. And the marketing agents would have got on average, and I'm saying on average, it's probably a bit more, but let's use averages, on average about 6% on that by way of commission. When you multiply 6% over 900, do the math, and it's the $11 million is really not a lot, particularly over the extent of the foreseeable damage. Look, I hope that it's not as the damage isn't as extensive, and I hope that they can mitigate the damage over the years, and can control it and maintain it for the sake of the 900 families or the 900 people that are going to be living in there permanently by renting or ownership, whatever the case may be. But it definitely, I think the majority of the population and the investors or potential buyers are going to see through this. And but look, as I said, good. This is a step forward in the right direction, particularly with this developer. That from this company, it's something that you got to give them credit where it's due, because what about all the other 100 or so developers in and around the area that have shut shop already, that have closed their companies, and that have phoenixed their companies in order not to be sued or pursued?
Absolutely. Well, I've got a novel thought. If you build it right in the first place, you're not going to have defects down the track, right? So that's the first point. And the second is, of course, also that 20 years down the track, things are going to be quite different. But I wonder what all the documentation and everything that has to be put in place through that period to deal with it. It gets quite complicated quite quick. But symbolically, I agree with you. I think it is actually an interesting step in a direction that needs to be taken, because there has to be some way of building more confidence for people. People at the moment are just not interested in transacting otherwise. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, look, Martin. The thing is, you're talking about the we're talking construction issues, right? And we're talking about the if you build it right, things should work out differently. But let's not forget that the third party or a party to all this fiasco are the local governments. In the likes of Opal Tower, you've even got the state government involved. So you've got government bodies and government parties that are involved. Let's not forget that when land is rezoned in a lot of the LGAs now, which is something that I brought up on reports about 5 years ago when they started doing it in Parramatta 5-6 years ago, was when there was when land was rezoned in the CBDs, the commercial CBDs of some of these LGAs, the council took a percentage upside of the profit that a developer would make. And this is what I was talking about and banging on for many years. And that is in Parramatta, at one stage, all you could build over 1,000 square meters was nothing more than a 3-story walk-up. Or if it was in the CBD, you could build up to about 27, 32 units. When the zoning changed, you could go up 21 levels, and you could, on that same block of land, you could build 110 units. And in order to accommodate for car spacing, you had to dig a lot further, a lot deeper, in order to accommodate for parking. But there was it's the upside that the councils would share of when in that incremental change from the lower amount of units to the higher amount. There was a percentage that the councils would take by way of what they call council contributions. Now, that made things very, very it put the cat amongst the pigeons. It made it very dicey, and policy changes would one would think were being made not for the betterment of the landscape, and not for the betterment of that LGA and the CBD of that LGA, but it was made more so for the incomes that all parties would earn short and long term. So when you start putting this sort of pressures on construction, and as I also said that there are a lot of areas in the Sydney metropolitan area that you shouldn't dig lower than one basement, because the soil, and the geotech reports in many areas would tell you otherwise, that the buildings above should be limited by height and by weight. So therefore, in a lot of these areas, they've exceeded that by anywhere from 30 to 60%. So that puts a lot of pressure on the natural landscape, and of course you're going to have all these issues. So yes, in 20 years, who's to say that bloody thing would be standing? Who's to say that Opal Tower is going to be standing in the next 5 years? I mean, look at what's happening with Mascot and a lot of the other buildings that we're having issues with.
Absolutely. Well, I've got this saying, which is follow the money, right? Follow the money. It's quite important, particularly in the property development sector. And if the money flows to the councils, that's clearly going to influence them. Another example, Edwin, I made a post just recently on New Zealand, right? And interestingly, there was some analysis done in New Zealand that 95% or thereabouts of MPs in New Zealand owned at least 2 properties, right? And they actually had benefited hugely by the massive increases in property values over the last year in New Zealand, right? And on average, they'd actually made more from the growth in property values than their income last year. Now, tell me that MPs and politicians are not going to be influenced by the value that can be created for themselves in all of this. I think you've got to follow the money.
Oh, look, you've got to follow the money. And on that note, Martin, following the money, look at what's happening with Bitcoin now. Last week there was an announcement that strip clubs in America, or some famous strip clubs in America, are accepting Bitcoin, and now I think it's up to 40,000. Just got to follow the money.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, watch this space. People are saying it's going to go up even higher, so we'll see.
Told you, have a lot of faith, Martin. Have a lot of faith.
Yeah. Well, we'll watch with interest. I'm getting more and more interested in this concept of people staking coins. Right. In other words, they lend them out again to somebody else and receive interest on their stake. Right. That seems to me to be how a lot of people are actually making money at the moment.
Look, it's crazy. Can we think of anything any other way? There was a post on some social media platform. More than likely, it was Twitter or somewhere there. Some chip, some Dorito that they're expecting to get something like a couple $1 million for it because it has some a particular shape. It's shaped a particular way or some crazy stuff like that. So, I mean, can the world get any crazier, Martin? Than what it is already and what we're facing.
As I say, follow the money, Edwin. Follow the money. All right. There's too much money around chasing all sorts of silly things at the moment. So, but look, let's come back to your tip of the week because I think this is actually a really important one and probably heartfelt this week.
Look, the tip of the week is very simple and something that obviously that. As I say, it's a lot of our tips are based on what we go through, what we see in our travels throughout the week. So my tip for this week is: look, if you've been postponing dental work or surgery, think again. I would recommend that you go see your dentist, go see your doctor, your GP, get that referral to the specialist, get it done because. Not only because of the supply chains that are affecting the rest of all industries industries in general, but that supply chain is also going to be affecting, and it is affecting the medical sector, and in turn it will affect our pharmaceuticals as well. Now, with my experience, Martin, I just learned today that. The places where I had to get the imaging done, or the CT scan and the CT scan, the ultrasound, and the MRI, the different venues, they're now listed under the spots of concern, and I had to quickly backtrack and see when I attended those, pre the surgery. And thank God that I missed them by half a day or even by a day. So there's going to be a lot more pressure on medical facilities and on the frontline workers. So if you've been putting it off, don't put it off any longer. Take it from me. I've been putting this. I've actually been had these issues for a number of years. Needless to say, and then when I saw the specialist this time around after an severe attack, he said, I'm lucky to be to be in the condition of the state where I am. They were actually preparing for the worst. They were actually preparing for a lot more than what it was. That's why I'm a little bit croaky as well, because I had to send all sorts of different apparatuses down my throat, and that's why my previous condition with my throat, it affected that. So I had to, look, just go and do it. Just go and get it done, and don't postpone it any longer for your sake and for your family's sake.
Yeah, Edwin, of all the tips of the week, I think that's probably one of the most important and, as I say, heartfelt. So I appreciate that. Get well soon, and I look forward to checking in with you next week and when we do another rant.
Look, I look forward to that as well, Martin, as always. And I like listening to and watching your videos that you share on a daily basis. Very much on point. And from the Twitter chat today, you've been mentioned a number of times, and how very instrumental and thought-provoking, as well as educational, you've been over the last few years, particularly, and with your sharing posts and your diligence. So I really commend you and your team as well, and all the best to you and your loved one.
Thank you, Edwin. Well, you take care too, and we'll do it all again next week. See you later.
Ciao.
Bye.